Hi everyone, welcome to the Tony Tan Show and podcast. IoT Devices is taking the world by storm. According to research by Tech Jury, there are 8.7 billion devices in 2020, and yet this will grow to 64 billion devices by 2025, and that is a staggering number. And IoT devices will be a $4 trillion economy by the year 2025. And yet, in our interviews with enterprises, there are concerns about what IoT devices could bring to them. What are these concerns, and how does it impact you, even if you are a consumer? To understand these questions and know what is IoT, join me in my podcast where I will invite Mr. Andrew Draper, Senior Vice President of Armis, to be on our show today. Hi Andrew!
Tony, how are you?
Excited to have you in our show today.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Yeah. While I was walking out the other day, some tweetybirds was telling me that, if you want to know about these three alphabets called IoT, you are the man.
Wow, that's a big
I should
statement.
be talking
Thank you
to.
very much. Thank you.
Please shine a light. Educate me. What is IoT, Andrew?
Well, IoT, it's by an acronym. Obviously, that's what we call the Internet of Things. We can go into the real deep technical definition, but let's broaden that out to say, rather than saying IoT today, because there's a lot of acronyms that people will hear and speak about, whether it be IoT, IT, we all know traditionally, OT, operational technology, ICS, BMS, IOMT, which is Internet of Medical Technology. Let's just break that down for everybody listening as to say, what is that? Well, it's basically connected devices. And what do we mean by connected devices? I'm going to move on to another term, assets. So connected device is obviously quite simple. People don't understand that is a device that's connected, whether we say to the network or the wider internet. And what do they do? Well, obviously we can say in our home environment, they're helping us live. We could argue yes or no, because my wife doesn't like sometimes the amount of TV I watch, but we've become much more at home now, really, for me. There's a lot of streaming services, smart TV, smart devices. Even for me, stupidly at the home, when I put my barbecue on, because I'm Australian, I have a digital thermometer that my phone buzzes when the meat's right at the right temperature. It's made our lives, probably can say, a lot more easy and efficient. Then on the let's say on the corporate side, what has that done? And really, if you think about it from a business point of view, and you're a businessman, why do you invest in certain technologies? Well, really, it's to create business efficiencies, to save money, and also to help you make more money. And then there's probably a third factor, which if you look at it from a health point of view, it's really about that patient, helping them in that. Now we say the digitization of medical technologies is helping that patient journey, doing things in more clinical, efficient way, both in terms of the ability to a hospital to see more patients, and also maybe a precision way in which they're giving the right level of medical treatment to people. But then this is all the good news, but it's not a bad news, but let's have a guess. We're talking about this guessing coming in together. I think you know the answer to this, but I think Armis, where I work, we may dispute a little bit.
Yes.
But there's billions of devices. We agree with that today.
Yeah, some say that we're getting to 65 billion devices by 2025.
Correct. And that's what Armis, our research shows that as well. And what's the challenge in that? Well, obviously, first and foremost, if the listener, you, me, the person sitting over there behind the screen, well, that's quite easy. It's numerical, right? There's just so many devices. You think about that. As in my bag walking in here today to see you, I think I'm carrying and wearing 4 connected devices. So whether that be in the home, whether that be in the office, or whether that be in a food manufacturer or a hospital, that's what a thing that we use the term, my attack surface, talking from the bad actor state point of view, where my attack surface gets bigger. And then the problem with the vast majority of those devices is a simple question. A security camera sitting in this office, well, how do we secure that today? We really can't, because it by virtue has not been designed to run any non-proprietary firmware or software on it. And those devices, like that, simple devices that we see and that we use, they become the entry point into whether it be our home or our home office or the workplace or, as I said, a hospital or a factory or a government authority. They are the new area of vulnerability for people to get into organisations.
That's a very interesting question. But before that, can I say something? You were saying that when you come to this podcast, you have 4 connected devices. And some people say autonomous cars are a part of IoT in the future, right?
Correct.
Even your ride in the near future could be an IoT device as well.
Yeah.
Right? But we don't often see it in that light.
Yeah. And not in automated cars today, but there's obviously very many documented stories now of industrial espionage, like the Colonial Pipeline attack last year, in which people got in and they were able to turn that pipe off. Now, that's really more of an economic impact. It impacted people trying to fill their cars with fuel. But the thing that really personally terrifies me, and I think we're going to touch upon it as well, is that next level. It's the loss of human life potentially. Let's think about that. And I don't like to talk about this, but it is something we need to all be aware of and discussing, is that ransomware today, and let's take a step back. So, on the good side, as I said, businesses invest money to make and save money for business efficiencies, right? We all understand the economics of that. On the criminal side of internet, where the criminals lurk and there's the state-based actors, what's their motivation? Well, a few years ago, it was actually to extract your or my personal data, or potentially your credit card or my credit card data. Then it moved on to building our database of information, your credit card information, your home information, your health information. That had economic value on, let's use the term, the dark web. But obviously business has pivoted, and then there's been now the rise of ransomware. Now, most people listening will think of, and I do as well initially, ransomware is the ability to encrypt your data or my data or a business's data or a government-based data, and then somebody pays that ransom, then they'll unencrypt that data. But fortunately, unfortunately, we're now facing, and it's not really the term I use, is basically that ransomware at scale. So if you think about a hospital, whether it be in Singapore or in Australia, what about if I could affect the power supply to that hospital? Now they're performing saving tasks. The threat of that, that costs human lives now, and that's what we're seeing that. And Armis, where I work, and our research will show, if anybody would like to count to 11 right now, and I'll just do it in my head, one ransomware attack happens every 11 seconds throughout the world right now. And probably by the end of this discussion today, that'll mean there'll be 16 to 20 effective ransomware attacks going on. That's costing business on average $20 billion a year. And I'm sure you will agree, and we do, and I do personally, that that's not going away. It's just going to increase and increase and increase.
Yeah, Andrew, and it's a very interesting thing. You see, the last few years, when we talk about cybersecurity, you talk about the things that's making headlines in the newspaper, it's more hitting the conventional computers that we work on, the servers.
Yes. Yeah.
And we're spending billions of dollars to secure that. Why are we hearing now about the Internet of Things? Why are we hearing about this attack vector that is coming in? What's that change? What do you think has changed?
Yeah, well, as I've mentioned, so obviously the bad actors, they're always reacting, right? And so unfortunately, we're in the reactive industry, not the active industry. So it comes back to what we discussed at the start. The majority of these devices you and I are talking about, I think we see there's about 11, 12 billion devices in the world today. The vast majority of them are unmanaged. So they, by virtue, become the easy pathway in. Because, whether it be in your home, whether it be in your business, those unmanaged devices is a simple term we'll talk about, and I'll keep coming back to it. You can't manage what you can't see. So whether it be in your business, you may say, hey, like there's devices sitting here. Now that can be through a number of things. Like you said, well, we're doing things for business efficiency, but I haven't considered that could be a problem. Or whether it be that, hey, there's a lot of, let's say, servers or IT equipment that we were once using, but it's still sitting there. I'm not patching it. I don't really know what is going on. Or even in some larger businesses, and we would all know this, that people like bring in contractors to perform certain business functions for them, and they say, hey, we need to have some equipment within your business or your hospital that we're just completely not visible to that. And that's where I think therein lies the problem, because the problem's become at scale now, as we're talking about. There's so many devices.
So it's not just IoT devices, but it's also unmanaged computer devices.
Let's just say every device. I'm not saying don't drop the acronym, don't talk about it the rest of today, but it's more, let's just talk the term devices, and then we can jump onto this, the word asset. So an asset, generally, I did accounting a very long time ago when I had hair. An asset is something that I talked about. It derives economic value. So these assets obviously are being used, as we're saying, for the sense in which their purpose of which they're designed for, but people are being able to exploit them.
I see. So right now, we are looking at this rise of this surface areas that people are trying to exploit it, and it is really dangerous. And I don't think it's just for enterprises; it's also for home consumers, right?
Sure. So we all work from home now. The pandemic's driven that. So there's that. I know we'd love using terms, but I suppose that with the word convergence. So your office, my office, from 2.5 years ago became the home office for the last 2+ years.
Yeah.
So then if you think about that, like my young son who's 7 may have a friend who comes over that connects to my Wi-Fi. I'm not, it's a scenario. He may have a device which is obviously maybe compromised. There's something wrong with it. Then maybe something gets into my home. Then it gets into my home office. Maybe it gets onto one of my devices that I connect to my business. And then, potentially there's that, gap there.
And we call this backdoor.
Correct. Then within the home, obviously, for me, consumers, it's more not only the issue of security, but it's the issue of privacy. So, most of us now may have some form of video surveillance systems. They're great. Now, I live in Melbourne. I'm here in Singapore. Somebody knocks on my door. I can see on my phone, who it is. I can speak to them. That's a great thing. But then obviously there's the risk that if somebody gets in and can take over that camera, they can see if I'm home or not. The potential, even things like digital door locks, great idea. But then, could they be compromised as well? So they're things that everybody should be aware of, like most things in life. I'm not saying, consumer beware. When you're buying these things, think about, the reputation of the manufacturer. Always, obviously, we say, update the firmware when you're told to do that. Obviously, those simple security policy practices, strong passwords, even creating a guest network in your own home. These are probably some of the proactive measures that we can all take to secure ourselves, our digital lives, and our digital profiles.
This is for our home consumers who are listening into this show. Those are the easy things that you could do, right?
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, I'm not saying you have to become a cyber expert, that, you're vigilant, you're sitting up to midnight reading online. But more when you see something, think about that. Obviously, a simple thing like when your Google Chrome browser says click update. Because they've done that for a reason, obviously. And
a lot of us don't do that, right?
Yeah,
we have this habit of procrastination. Okay, next day, or we tend to delay such things.
Yeah, and then some of those things, maybe for certain things we're looking to buy, maybe research the brand that you're going to buy into. Just go online, see, and maybe said brand security issue, security problem, some Google searching like that.
Yeah, do some research.
Yeah. And then just always assume that, I'm not saying don't trust everything, but, just assume that, make sure we know what we're getting into. Most of us, myself included, always click the accept, and scroll through the fine print. And I'm talking about privacy here to ensure that, that when you're speaking and a device could be listening, to you. And, just understand the risks that are involved in that.
Yeah, I like the part that we talk about strong password. People are very lazy with password nowadays, just for convenience sake.
Tony 1234.
Yeah, or Tony Tan or something like that. By the way, that's not my password in case you guys are thinking about it. Yeah, but you see, passwords and things like two-factor authentication are easily done, and you eliminate 85 or 90% of your problems out there.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
And we want to advise our audience to do this, especially those who have a lot of IoT devices at home.
Yeah.
But Andrew, coming back, from the consumers back to the enterprise, right? We know for a fact that these IoT devices are growing by leaps and bounds in enterprises today. Any sort of industries, we are seeing this growth here. Is there a low-hanging fruit for some of these industries they can do to secure these devices?
Well, I joined Armis 18 months ago. I've been in security now for 15 plus years. I mean, there's certain things I really there's certain acronyms I can say that we all security is people, policy, and practice, right? People have to be on board. They have to understand what the risk is. Okay, the company's asked me to do certain things. They're not laborious. They're to protect the company. The policies and the practices are basically, the company builds those frameworks around that. It's not just about the technology that we're deploying and using, but it's about, those things being embedded properly, the automation of security. Information security has a challenge. I think you would agree that there's a shortage of, information security professionals in the world today. And that's one of the things that Armis, I'm not trying to just talk about and sell Armis to everybody, but the automation of security I think is very, very important as well, where tools can integrate with one another. And I know your other business, Imperium, there's certain tools that you have that Armis can integrate into. They're very important things. But stopping from there and coming back to the point, that's the basic problem we've been talking about today. Most organisations, companies, whether they're government, healthcare providers, banks that we see and speak to, if you look at the normal security regulatory frameworks or compliance frameworks that are in place, always in the top three, they'll say you must have an audit of your assets. And as I said, coming back again, when I say the word asset, I'm not talking about a financial asset. I'm talking about these assets, IT devices. Now, what we're saying, not just any device. You must understand every device. You must have visibility of all of those devices. And there's that term that we use at Armis, or I've been taught, is that what's the baseline device behaviour of that asset? So your iPad's sitting there on the desk. Let's just assume a bank owns 1,000 of them. Let's just say 2 or 3 of them are not behaving in their normal manner. Well, how do I really find that out today? That's pretty difficult without a proper platform in place to be able to do that. And that's really what Armis does, and that's our value, is we give complete device visibility and a really quick, time to value that a company, whether it doesn't mean if they have, one site or 1,000 sites, they can quickly deploy it. They'll get full visibility. We catalogue everything, so we say that's an iPad, that's a laptop, that's a camera, that's a microphone. And then from there, obviously information is power. Once we start seeing that, we can understand what the risks are, and we bring in a lot of vulnerability-based information for people to be able to track and understand, again, what's good behaviour and what's bad behaviour. And the third step of that proactive nature, is in which we can say with some of your partners today that we can pass that information on to give them much more granular, much more enhanced information to make the security operations
enrich
much more
information
enriched. There you go. I was reaching for that word, but my vocabulary wouldn't let me get there. So that's really the story and the nature of what we do as a business. We help those businesses understand these assets. As we've seen at the start, there's so many of them. They're coming from everywhere, that we must, approach this in a different aspect. And the term, we're using now, is really that asset intelligence, understanding these assets and in an intelligible way, understanding the conceptual nature and how they're working, how we're going to be able to manage them, what the risks are associated with them in real time.
Yeah.
And that's the important thing, because as we saw today, I walked in with 4 devices. If I did connect to the Wi-Fi here, nobody knows what those devices are. Are they risky or are they not? And then I walk out. There could have been something there straight away.
And I'm very excited that Armis have this technology that's agentless, right? That allows us to have very little impact on the devices while we are able to get all this enrichment of data.
It's a great point. Yeah. And there are 2 things there. So let's look at it. Armis is one of our great virtues. We're a completely agentless technology. So as I said a few minutes ago, security camera sitting in a warehouse at say Changi Airport. You'll never, even if you could, have the time, because there's so many devices. If somebody has to, then there's got to be a downtime, change control, putting software on that device, ensuring that it doesn't fall over. That would be an impossible task. So we're an agentless device, meaning we will discover everything. Secondly, we're passive. So like I talked about today, in health operations, do we really want to think that there's an intrusive, security technology potentially being put in line in a digital health hospital operating that way? You probably don't. And those things, the virtues of that is that, as I said, it's time to value. So most of our customers see a very, very fast time to value. And when I say time to value, what does that mean? Well, what that means is that we can deploy very quickly. There's not a lot of use of human capital. And when I say human capital, we mean people having to be resourced, bought in, to do that. And then results are pretty much instantaneous. With most customers, 2 to 3 days, we're getting a full catalogue of what they're doing and what they're seeing in their organisation.
I really, really like to drill into 2 points that I really like when I hear you mentioning
now
about
I'm in trouble.
Tag. No, you're in a good place. The first thing we're talking about is that you are passive and you're agentless.
Yes.
And we know in a big enterprise, the situation is the dynamics are changing every second.
Correct.
Devices are coming in, coming out. And if it is agentless and it's passive, it allows us to capture this information a lot more robust.
Yeah.
Right? And you're rightly to say that for us to capture this information fast is important, rather than we take time to put in an agent and to find what's going on. By the time it could be game over.
Correct. And then the other aspect there is that, well, as I said, there's unmanaged devices there. You cannot put an agent on them.
Exactly.
So that would be the challenge if we went down this traditional path where we say we have to roll out agents where we're not going to get full visibility.
Yeah. And a lot of organizations are blindsided by that today.
Correct.
Right? And traditional tools don't allow us to see that as well.
Correct. So again, I say this, that this approach that the two co-founders, Yevgeny and Adir, started 6 years ago, the idea and the thought, and I don't want this to come across as it's a very simple idea and concept, but an extremely powerful area. And as I said, getting back to the compliance standards and the government, everything says there's in Australia, certain standards, I think it's number 1. It says, you must have a full inventory of what you have. Now, traditionally, how have we done that, Tony? Well, we've employed people to come in to do an audit for us, just like the old days of doing a stock take, trying to go around and tag things with a code and doing it. It's impossible. It's an impossible task. And that's the thing, that's the thing, as I said, that, organisations are growing, organisations are complex. Organisations just aren't like a castle with a moat around it anymore and a front door. No, there's, as we're saying, business to business, home workers, there's contractors coming in, as I've mentioned, third-party people coming in to put in devices and equipment for business efficiencies. There's many, many, many ways now and more. Complexity is the problem there.
And this dynamic, the way that technology works is so dynamic. We're able to build this, able to cater to this flexibility in a kind of like a borderless world that we are in right now.
Correct.
And the other thing that you spoke about that I really was really keen to explore a little bit more is the fact that we go to market fast with a lot less manpower. So what we are seeing is traditional tools, you need really a lot of people going down, install, make sure the agent reports back and stuff like that. It's extremely time consuming. And if you look at today in COVID-19, the pool of resources that we have is under tremendous strain.
Another great point, yeah.
Yeah, and the fact is, it's not just we are under a lot of strain, right? We have this great resignation that's happening, and it's a fact that people have more time to reflect upon their job, reflect about the meaning of life. Nobody's want to do the manual, repetitive stuff again. They want to go up the value chain. So if we are having colleagues or our customers are having these resources or these talents hooked to do this manual stuff that has very little contributions to their career growth, we're going to have a problem.
That's right. As we said, as we said at the top when I was talking about people, policy, and practices, right? And I always say this other thing: it's an imperfect world with imperfect people and imperfect practices, right? The world, unfortunately, isn't black and white, and then we've all looked at these things where. As you said, it's not to say that we're picking on the workers here, but people cut corners, right? And then people are by nature, like maybe sometimes don't perform the task to their full, ability, and then obviously there's cracks. And as we're saying, and not just that, but as we're saying that, like a corporate laptop will put an agent on it, right? But then. I bet you in your business, in my business too, I notice most of my staff always bring in another device, right? Whether it be another tablet or something of that nature, it's very hard to cover all these cracks and holes. And, to the security employees, they should be really driven, to be at that high intellectual level that they're able to interpret the data coming in rather than the administrative job.
Yes.
And that's what I think we're Armis, that we provide that, where the piece in the middle where we're providing this really intelligible levels of data where existing security tools will get much more value out of that. And also the second factor there is where companies can then eliminate other tools where they'll say, well, we didn't actually get value out of that tool. And, we've been wasting time, money, resources and people and energy and effort into trying to get this to work efficiently. And then we can actually free up the human capital. We can free up the money to invest further in things that are more meaningful and will deliver more results from us from a security aspect.
Consolidate, do less,
yes,
more.
Yeah, that's one of our real value drivers as a company that we're saying to people, and we see this every day. And I'm not here to say, what's the bad technology or things like that, but we are driven, by the industry to go and deploy these things and to do those things and to take on those projects. And I see many, many companies that there are those stalled projects, dead projects. There's even those cases where there's still, whether it be hardware, software, sitting on a shelf because we never got around to deploying it. Or, probably the even worse one, and I've seen that in companies I've worked for, where companies invest in a security technology, but they never properly finely tune it. They never understand the data and the analytics coming out of that. And really, that's because companies are limited, in their time and money and effort, like you said at the top, that question that you asked me.
Yeah, and I in our experience of looking at these agent-based implementations, there's a lot of conflict in customers' environment between operations and security teams, right? And often this will fail a project by itself, right? If there's any issues with the agent rolls out and both teams sometimes they're not on the same page, right? And that could cause a lot of problems for the proper utilization of these technologies as well.
Correct.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I'm excited that what is Armis doing. I'm excited the technology that you are talking about. And I'm especially excited that we are able to right now do an agentless collection of information for IoT devices as well, right?
That's right. But let's be clear on this. So, because it's a common, I don't want to say misnomer, you haven't made a mistake, but Armis identifies everything.
Yes.
When I go to a meeting with customers, they say, what do you mean by everything? And I say everything. So even in this building, anything that's connected to the network, Armis will identify, classify, give a risk rating, and then the next level of security, being able to integrate, automate, and help the posture of the business become much, much better, quite instantaneously. And I'll just touch upon how do we do this. So the great, usage of technology today, Armis is what we call a SaaS, security as a service technology. So the core components of what we do is that we monitor, now we're going to get back into the billions again, constantly 2.5 billion devices every day of the week, 24/7, 365 days of a year. And as you say, information's power. When you have that many devices, then we get to see what all these devices are doing, and then we can uniquely identify, I think it's 8.5 million devices. So I said earlier, that's then what we say is, so in this environment, your iPad, what's the baseline device behavior of that iPad? What's the applications you're running on it? And then what's the firmware? What's all these actual intricate levels of details of information that we can extract, and then we can compare that against all the other iPads that we're seeing in the world, and then report to you or to, the business itself to say potentially, that tablet's not working to the amount, the correct level of performance that should be, or there could be a security risk with that. And there's a very good example that our CTO Nadir gives in one of his presentations, that in a corporate environment there was a device such as that being used for the audio-visual, for the actual TV and the telephone system or Zoom meetings, that it actually was extracting out, voice and, the data from that meeting. It had been compromised. So if it wasn't for Armis being able to pick that up, that probably would have gone on and on and on, because it just looks like a regular iPad device that nobody's really giving any attention to that.
Yeah, one of my colleagues had the same experience. I think he has a fan, IoT fan at home, extracted 2.5 terabytes of information from his home.
The jumping point, right?
This is real, right? We're not talking about something that is very far away. It's happening, and it's happening in Singapore.
Yeah, I mean, all these devices we talk about today, I mean, the Armis research team is just, and I don't want to become technical, but we've just announced it's called TLS Storm, which is basically APC, UPS, universal backup and supply, basically, like a battery sitting on the floor.
Glorified batteries backup.
That, if the lights go out here because the power goes off, it kicks in to give us continued power supply. But our researchers have found some vulnerabilities there in which, a third party can come in to overtake that device, and then, by virtue of that, like you're saying, wreak havoc, within an organisation. And as I said as well, it's not just about extracting data; it's actually about, potentially, really, as I said. I know it sounds crazy, starting a fire, the loss of life, or the risk of life is there because of these vulnerabilities.
Wow, this is serious. If you can trip a UPS supply in the data center, you could shut down the data center, actually.
Like I said, and these things are real. They're not, from a James Bond movie or things like that. Like, we're looking at these things that there's, our own research and reporting, and, it's publicly available. There's motor car companies, brewers, Colonial Pipeline, we've seen that the ability to turn off production lines, production facilities, an oil line. Most of the time when I hear in Australia, they say that, there's been an outage in the ATM network, or, some communications fallen over somewhere. Generally, I'm only guessing, so I'm not saying take this as fact and take it back to the bank, that they are cyber-related issues there. Or just simple misconfigurations within the network itself, which again Armis can help people identify and alleviate that pain.
Well, either way, intentional or not, the damage is done.
Correct.
Right, and I think this is something that we want to avoid it as much as we can. And we always say that we cannot use yesterday's tools to solve tomorrow's problems.
That's right.
Right, and I think that you, Armis, and yourself is at the right place at the right time to really help us to secure our cyber posture, and reduce the cyber footprint, right, for what the bad actors can do to us today.
Well, as I said, information's power, right? It's a simple term we all use. As I've said, the known unknowns. What are the things that I know that are unknown to me today in my business that I need to shine light on? And really, Armis is the tool and the company to do that. It's incredible technology. I feel privileged to work there. Great culture, great business, great founders, great leaders, and great partnerships here in Singapore. It's an interesting time and an interesting place to work for. I'm very passionate about security. It's not just for me to pick up my check. It's something I'm very interested in. I like speaking to people about it. I like to get an understanding of people like yourself, customers like that, of what's going on in this landscape. The thing I think we've been talking about is then it's more than in the current environment, like what's going on in the world. The war in Ukraine, we see that now. That fortunately, unfortunately, cyber warfare, is a fact now, and that's something which I think's a sad state of affairs in the world.
Well, Andrew, I've been speaking to a lot of cyber security specialists, and we have identified that the weaponization of codes is a fact.
Yeah.
And it's not going to go away. And if anything about the Ukraine war, it just shows us that it is a fact and it's going to escalate.
Agreed.
Now more than ever, we will need all these top solutions to help us to ensure that we are not a victim of these attacks.
In my generation, we all, or I do definitely, the Chernobyl, the meltdown of the plant there and the subsequent, obviously, release of radioactivity and that whole area, how it's sort of a unique thing that's going to be locked away for hundreds of years. When you hear and see that there's fighting near there, now I know that's physical fighting, but then made me think about that to say, well, potentially, the weaponization of being able to get into that, or any nuclear plant, power plant that is, in the Ukraine, and something being able to turn off, as we say, a simple thing, the water supply. Obviously, power plants, nuclear power plants, they need constantly water to cool things. If I can manipulate and turn it off, well, that will obviously create, we're talking about a massive, potential loss of life. And these are the things that we're facing, and as I say, once something's released, there's no pulling back from it, right?
Yeah.
And it's a sad state of things, and it makes me feel horrible to talk about it, but anything, like in any warfare, obviously once we went from, spears to swords to guns to cannons, and, this is probably the next step where, we'll see this. And once it starts, as I say, it's hard to pull back from that.
Yeah. Well, Andrew, I think you have given us a lot of insights.
Thank you.
I mean, you share with us on IoT and the importance to manage all unmanaged devices, all devices in organization. It's not just IoT. Although today we talk a little bit more because that's the growth area.
Yeah.
A big, huge growth area that might have blindsided some customers. And the visibility that we are getting, right? And the fact that we are using technology that allows us to reduce the need for human intervention, human resources, which is really great in today's world that we live in, and the ability to be dynamically available, to get dynamically ready, right, to see all the information that is out there that's absolutely critical in a fast-changing world that we are living in. So I want to switch a little bit, all right, from Armis back to you as a person. Mr. Andrew. So I know that you have worked with some of the best, most exciting IT security companies, from Imperva now to Armis. You are definitely a very intelligent man. So I want to ask you this. Well, your career is really exciting. Along in the last 20, 30 years in this growth for you, was there a time in your life that you were brought low, right? Either from a personal crisis or work crisis, and how do you recover from the episode?
Of course. All of us every day are challenged in life, on a personal front. We all of us, I'll be honest, I've had personal tragedy in my life, professional failure. We all fail, let's be honest, right? It's more, as you say, it's the person that can get up off the floor and want to keep, and I don't want, punching and moving forward. And it's just that for me, first of all, I love life. I'm very happy. I'm very privileged in my life. I've travelled, I've seen the world, most parts of the world through my own eyes, and most of that's been, from the privilege of working for some very good companies. As I said, outside, I've just returned from the Bahamas, which I never thought I would go to a country like that. But again, Armis, we had a company meeting there. I'm very, very thankful that we've done that. It was a great event. But as I said, I love life. I love my family. I have a beautiful wife, 2 beautiful sons. I've had the privilege of living in this country, Singapore, for 5 years. It's my home away from home. And I guess it's those times of doubt, which we all have in life, whether it be, as you say, personally, there's always some issues, or professionally. It's that ability to, I guess, back yourself, to have confidence to say, that, my dad always used to say this, as long as the sun comes up in the morning, there's nothing much wrong in the world, right?
Oh, that's a nice way to look at it.
And from my point of view, life's a wonderful thing. Life's worth living. Life's worth making new friends. You and I only met a few months ago, but I can see you, and I always say that thing, that karma, that you have a very good, bright outlook of life, and we always want to be around people like that. And literally, that's my view, and that's the main thing I love about my job. It's the people that you meet. It's not about, the chasing the sale. Of course, that's great. It's very professionally rewarding, but it's, for me, the people that I work with, it's enriching their lives. And I don't mean that just financially, I mean personally, that I always used to think, I say that now, that from the time that I meet somebody to the time that they leave the organisation, that I leave the organisation, have I had a positive impact on their life? In terms of helping them to develop their skills professionally, as being somebody that there's a trusted advisor. I'm not using it, not everybody becomes your friend, but somebody they can turn to ask for help or advice, that they trust you from that point of view. And that's what I find very much rewarding and enriching because of all these experiences. And I am turning 53 this year. I have lost all my hair because I think we're being filmed. But I guess at my age now, it's that benefit of wisdom. And that's a great thing when you get older. And I must say that, okay, your waistline gets a bit bigger, your face looks a bit older when you look in the mirror each day. But it's really that thing of saying, not saying I've been there and done that, I've seen it all. But as I said at the start, I know what success is, I know what for failure is, and I know what I prefer to be as a successful person. So I have the confidence that I know that I'm what I'm doing. I'm not overconfident or arrogant, but I do, understand, where my place is in the world. I understand where I want to get to in my life, and it's a very rich and rewarding time of my life.
So I think 2 things that you have mentioned that I really caught. First of all, proximity is power, right? Proximity to you is very important. It allows you to pull yourself up and move forward, right? The support there is critical. And the other thing that we talk a little bit is paying it forward. Right? To ensure that you give back. And that, I believe, gives a lot of satisfaction to you.
Absolutely. I'm a big believer in karma, that, what you give out in life is what you get back. And that's always for me, even the taxi driver coming here, I'm not, treat people with respect always, and kindness, and, not to say, hey, I'm the big, RVP, people should be moving around. No, not whatsoever. That, we treat people with respect, and we, always, have that outward look on life. And that's, I do generally believe that, the good deeds that I've done in my life have come back to me. Yeah.
Do good, be good.
That's right.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Thank
Tony,
you so much.
It's been fantastic. Thank you very much.
Your advice to us is really phenomenal. Your life experience to us is great, and we like to learn from a leader like you how to recover from downtime, how to make sure that we get the right proximity, how to pay it forward to make sure that our life is rewarding. Right. So thank you so much for sharing all these gems of wisdom with us, Andrew.
No, I appreciate the time and effort, and hopefully everybody listening, they got something out of it.
I got something out of it.
We shined a bit of light on this area. Just everybody, please go home tonight, think about in your home environment, update your software,
change
that password.
Set up the two-factor authentication.
And don't blame us.
Yeah, thank you so much, Andrew. We look forward to do more
I'd love
series
to. I
review.
really would love to. Thank you. And thank you for everybody for listening today.
Have a good day, Andrew.
Thank you.